Welcome to Healing America with Dr. Jim White. Jim has been investing, coaching executives, and turning around companies for over 30 years. Now your host, Dr. Jim White.
Good evening and welcome to Healing America. This is Jim White. It is the 17th day of November, and we have a returning guest with us this evening. You may remember, I think it was session 2 that we did in Healing America when we launched our book, Broken America. We had Professor Robert Shapiro with us at that time, and we had a great discussion. And I asked if he would come back after the election so we could talk about some of the results, and we certainly have a lot to talk about. So in way of introductions, let me just give you all the wonderful stuff that the professor has done over the years. He is former chair of the Department of Political Science at Columbia University, and he also served as the acting director of the Columbia's Institute for Social and Economic Research and Policy during another traumatic, tremendous, crazy time, 2008 and 2009. He's also a fellow of the American Association for Advancement of Science, and he specializes, and what a great, great, great day to be back, specializes in American politics and research and teaching interest in public opinion, policymaking, political leadership, the mass media, and the application of statistical methods. He has taught at Columbia since 1982, after receiving his degree and serving as a study director at the National Opinion Research Center in Chicago. He has authored many books and co-authored many books and numerous major academic journals. Professor, welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
I tell you what, I couldn't wait. I had it on my calendar since we did the launch on September the 9th, and leading up to this election, and I've got notes on every piece of pad that I can find that I wanted to be able to remember to ask you about. And so if I do all of that, we need a show probably of about 2 weeks, and then we could probably get into it. But it's just pick up. I don't know. I just got some breaking news here. This whole thing here, and I just thought I'd just start off there. You probably saw it if you haven't. It was in Michigan where they failed to certify the election in the Detroit area. It's just breaking news here. You ever experienced that in your lifetime?
I've never experienced that in my lifetime, and we'll have to see what happens. I think it goes to the state board next, so we'll have to see.
It goes to the state board, and we'll have to see. You know what I'd like to do? There's so much to talk about this post-election, and so last time we were together, we were talking about Broken America, and we'd left off on talking about leadership and agency and public opinion and all of those things. It's pick up where we left off a little bit. You started, and I think about the time you started discussing that, we ran out of time. So it's pick up there and just refresh. So leadership, agency.
Okay, well, just to recap, one thing I had praised your book for was your emphasis in the book on what I called agency. That is the ability of leaders to take the initiative, and also on the part of the public, the citizenry, to kind of attempt to take leadership in trying to get this country out of its just dire straits of partisan conflict. Now, the other thing that's happened in the meantime, I thought part of the conflict could not get worse, but it obviously has in the context of this contested election. On the other hand, the incoming president, assuming he is the incoming president, has taken a position that he's going to give it the old Biden try to unite the country the way Obama had said he would try to, and George W. Bush had said he would try to as well, to apparently no success. What's different now, though, is that he's be taking office in the context of a national crisis, two crises,
Right.
Healthcare crisis, the pandemic, and also an economic crisis. And if there's a way to get out of this morass, a crisis provides the opportunity, because it's got to be something that to deal with in the context of a unified nation, both on the part of its leaders and the public. And we haven't done this yet, but this is just another opportunity to do that, especially in the context of things getting worse at the moment before they're going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Worse, not only from the transfer of power, possibly from that perspective, and the pandemic and the economic results as a result of the pandemic. Got a perfect storm in the making.
Yeah, it's a trifecta.
Yeah, it certainly is. You have spent many years in politics and looking at the media. I'm trying to figure out. So I got notes all over how to even ask the question, and but I'm 72, and I've never seen anything like this in a election. We all go through life, and we win some, we lose some, and we try to be a good sport about it, and especially when it comes to our democracy. And my concern is not only with President Trump, but my bigger concern is with the Republican leadership. And why in the world are they remaining so silent? What's your thoughts?
It really is extraordinary. But I thought the common wisdom is their silence has to do with their concern for maintaining the support of the base of the party, which for now is the Trump party. But what this election reinforced is how it really is the Trump party. Because what happened since the 2018 election was that the party actually expanded its base in a significant way. So it's no accident that Trump has received the second highest number of votes of any president running presidential candidate. Biden obviously being the first. Mm-hmm. And Democrats mobilized their base as well, but their mobilization of the base that they began to mobilize in 2018 was just enough to offset what the Republicans did. And so they can claim full credit for mobilizing their base of minority voters, women voters, young voters, and so forth. But that was needed just to basically break even with Trump. And they barely won the election by 5 million votes nationally and won enough states, but they did so by just accumulating the additional number of votes they needed, taking away some of the support that Trump had in 2016 to basically win the election handily, but in a way that I don't think is a guarantee for the party going forward, and especially given the fact that the Republicans held on to the Senate and also made inroads on the House of Representatives. Both parties now are very evenly matched and competitive. Which makes for a very emotional, ridden election, a contested election, not only now but probably going forward as well.
Pandemic, we're seeing the numbers spike, and I often hate to quote these numbers, but over 250 million and counting Americans have died as a result. And we have in action, in my opinion, from the White House, and I don't get how you can be in that office and not have some I'm going to say heart, or human that this is real, and yet the president refuses to even address it in a positive way. Short of me asking a question, how do you think Donald Trump, and we can't get inside of his head, we know that, but I don't understand it. Can you speak to, in your opinion, what is this man all about? What's he doing? Why do you think he's throwing all these landmines out there?
Well, what he's shown is that he's not willing to admit when he's wrong. and to learn from experiences. And he's basically fallen back on what he can call a strategy, but he hasn't stated it as such. But his strategy is basically a strategy of obtaining herd immunity by letting the virus run its course,
Right.
and then allow for a vaccine to be brought in. That seems to be the unspoken strategy here. And Dr. Atlas, who's his main advisor, has been a big proponent of that. And he is just letting it run its course. I would think that the Republicans in the Senate, at the drop of a hat, would support further government action, unified government action, if he said he was willing to do so. And because I think he's got that level of control of the party, at least for the moment, especially given the fact that the election showed that he had that degree of control of the party.
Mm-hmm. 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 What do you think about his inquiry as reported in the media? I'll qualify that about, can I pardon myself?
Well, that's an issue. I mean, there are ways of him trying to pardon himself, or even stepping aside for the moment under the 25th Amendment and letting Pence come in and pardon him. I think at this point, all of this is sort of out in the open and pretty transparent. If he does pardon himself, it does suggest he has some concerns about things he needs to be pardoned for.
Yeah, that's my take. When he even has that conversation and knows it's going to get out there, it's suggesting that I'm concerned about something, and he probably should be to a certain degree, especially in the state of New York from the Southern District and the investigation there, which is, we know no pardon will help him there if that should become an issue for him. In regards to President Trump's legacy, and where he got 72 million votes, that's still just, I still can't get my head wrapped around that. And in my opinion, he's the worst president in history, in my opinion, even though some of his policies I concur with. But for the man himself, I just think he's horrible representing especially Americans. And I'm going to speak from a veteran and a disabled veteran during the Vietnam conflict. I have a problem with that. So what do you think he's going to be remembered? What's he going to go down as? What people going to say about him?
Well, one perspective I have is that he'll go down history. He's made his mark on history already. He will go down in history. How it'll play out may depend on what happens in the next, in the next few weeks. He's had policy-related legacies in terms of deregulation, tax reform, and changes in the judiciary and the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court changes are basically for 30 years. They're that level of effectiveness in terms of changing the Supreme Court. He certainly, in terms of his reputation, you need to pick the right adjective in terms of how to define his character. I mean, for some people, he will go down as one of the most despicable presidents in American history. For others, he may go down as in a more favorable way, given the way his base has looked at him. The irony here is that when he was elected, and even without knowing that the pandemic was coming, he had an opportunity to be an effective and even potentially great president along the lines of the way Ronald Reagan has been perceived. And the pandemic was an opportunity for that to be his great war, where he could lead the nation through it. And had he taken that approach, attempted to unify the nation, told its base it needed to do what it needed to do as well to deal with the pandemic, we'd be in better shape. For another, he would probably have been reelected.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with that. If he had handled the pandemic, if he'd gotten down in front of it, I think no question about it, I think he probably would have been reelected. I want to go back to the 72 million and plus supporters. To me, 72 million people say that I approve of this individual. Has a deeper problem for me. as to how do we reach those 72 million people, and how do we say that they're supporting him because of his policies, they're supporting him for what reason? Underbelly.
Well, I think it's a combination of things, and as we say in the social science world, it may be overdetermined, overdefined, but there are a lot of things going on. Some of the supporters genuinely like his policies. There are people, particularly people who are pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, for whom the courts were very important. Just by virtue of the court appointments, that was enough for him to garner their support. For another, the way he rejects the politics of the left, the way he rejects identity politics, it's something that his supporters like. And when it comes down to it, there's a question of to what extent they're really voting for him, or they're voting for him because they think the opposition is just worse, and it's more of a defensive kind of thing. And there were a lot of buzzwords thrown around that scared people. Law and order. Law and order very prominently. The term socialism was resurrected in communism and things of that sort. Played out in ways to make people very apprehensive. I think they were manipulable in certain ways, but I think those kinds of things mattered, and there were certain surprises in the election. The problems with the polling aside, that suggested that his base is live and well, and he's been made inroads in certain areas, even among certain African Americans, and even more so perhaps among Latinos, especially in Florida.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Could you draw any comparisons between the 2016 general election and the 2020?
I think they were a lot of ways basically the same. I think Biden was a better candidate than Hillary Clinton. Biden and his supporters within the party and in the grassroots were able to mobilize the base to basically offset the mobilization that occurred among Trump's Republican base. And beyond that, he basically made inroads among white voters in a way that just turned the tide and enabled him to win Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So there were basically disgruntled Republicans who basically didn't vote for Trump, and either voting for him or not at all, or for a third party. And the elections were really strikingly similar in that respect.
Mm-hmm. How about Arizona?
The two surprises were Arizona and Georgia. Okay, that represents perhaps a significant sea change in the support for Democrats. Georgia substantially came through in ways that involved mobilizing the normal Democratic base, including African Americans there, but also better educated white voters, suburban voters in those areres. Those kinds of voters came back to support Biden in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania as well. But Biden made inroads there that will certainly put the Republican Party a bit more on the defensive.
Mm-hmm. How do you think Trump's treatment of, Senator McCain did play any role in Arizona, in your opinion?
Oh, I think it significantly played a role in Arizona. That was John McCain's revenge, so to speak. He got it in terms of his vote on the healthcare reform efforts, and also here in the election, both in terms of the presidential vote and also his Senate seat.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Arizona is by far the one that I was watching extremely close because I'm going to use the word fan of Senator McCain for so many years. I had such admiration from him, strictly from the military and other things that he did in his career. And then I looked at Georgia. Georgia also, man, I'm still reeling on the results of Georgia and the efforts of Stacey Abrams, I believe it is. with all of her efforts. And that's been 10 years in the making.
Well, that in a sense, that was Stacey Abrams' revenge over her failed gubernatorial.
Exactly.
But it's not over yet. That is
not over.
The two Senate runoff elections there, where Stacey Abrams can still have a even bigger effect.
It is, and I was going to follow up with that. And we look at Georgia and we watch how that played out. We go back and we watch the history and all the get out the vote and all the work that's been done in the past 10 years by Stacey Abrams and others. And then we come down to these two Senate seats, going back to Georgia again. And it's just like it couldn't have been scripted any better here. I mean, this thing is going to really, January the 5th is going to speak volumes, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Well, it speaks volume in terms of the control of the Senate, which is crucial for the Democrats. That is, if the Republicans maintain control of the Senate, that is going to completely constrain what Biden can do. Some people say there's an upside. The upside for that is that if that happens, Biden won't have the intra-party politics within the Democratic Party may be toned down a little bit because there's only so much Biden is going to be able to do. But on the other hand, if what's crucial is in terms of getting his appointments through, he really does need control of the Senate, because not only can they stymie legislation, but they can stymie judicial appointments. They can stymie cabinet appointments that would really put the executive branch in bad shape. And on top of it all, January 5th is before January 6th, and that's when the electoral votes go in, and everything is signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yes, it's the amazing of the timing of all of this. What do you think about I'm going to make some assumptions here for a moment. Assuming that the Democrats do not pick up the two Senate seats in Georgia, and we have, so now we got President Biden. Mitch McConnell or the progressive going to give him a bigger headache if the Senate is retained by the Republicans?
Oh, I think first and foremost it's McConnell who will give him the headache. In his effort to unify the country, he's got this crisis to deal with, and it's very clear that more aggressive federal action is needed. In fact, people were begging for it. These past few months, and just from the standpoint of experts, including especially, can take conservative economists. Conservative economists have basically said, in order to get the economy back in shape, we need to control the virus. And look at the Federal Reserve. We're talking about Powell and my colleague Rich Clarida, who's his deputy. And these aren't fringe leftist economists here. These are mainstream conservative type economists who basically said the Fed has done as much as it can do, and we really need a federal, stimulus here to turn things around. And we'll worry about the deficit later.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stimulus, we could talk about the why, but in my opinion, that's got to be one of the first acts that we got to undertake. We got to get some relief to the American people right now. I mean, people are so they're just suffering, and it's devastating. And I don't know where you saw these lines, but it was heartbreaking to me last night. And I saw a clip, I think it was in Texas, where you had miles and miles and miles of cars of Americans in line to get food. Just heartbreaking.
It's the economy and it's the pandemic also. And in terms of how to proceed to kind of unify the country and put pressure on the Senate, it's got to start with aid in the context of dealing with the virus. That is, the virus itself has no politics. The economy has politics attached to it. The virus, much less so. And the states are hurting. I mean, they're not, it's not just supplies that we're talking about here. We're talking about shortages of personnel. and figuring out how to get money and personnel to the places where they're most needed. And here, if McConnell balks at that, there has to be, public pressure. We're talking about pressure from public opinion, possibly even, demonstrations focusing on the pandemic. And this should have been done, basically long ago. This is long overdue. And how McConnell can, resist this is really, from my standpoint, unfathomable.
And I agree. And I often say, go to the mirror and look yourself in the eyes and look yourself in the soul. And how can you do that? And that's where I'm struggling a little bit with McConnell and some of the Republicans, even though Trump's policies has been okay, but just to be able to accept the character of the individual and continue to spread, which I think is principle number 6 in my book when I talk about tolerance and equality, right? And to continue to thread that or spread that is really challenging and disappointing.
Well, especially given that the virus is is striking pretty close to home in the White House, and then the latest breaking report was that Senator Grassley has now tested positive. So this is all getting ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. So, what's the rest of your year look like in 2020 for you, sir?
What does the rest of my year look like? Looks like well, trying to observe and study all of this, but really just from where the rubber hits the road is just basically teaching classes back at the university here in what we call in-person high flex mode, where the new normal in a classroom is lecturing in a big classroom with at most 15 students in it, the other students online. You're at a podium wearing a mask and trying to figure out how to position the camera so everybody can see the blackboard. That's turning into the new normal. Fortunately, here at Columbia, things seem to be going steadily okay so far, but the level of uncertainty really is enormous at the moment.
Mm-hmm. With the limited time we have left, what's some of the conversation in the class right now? What's some of the students? What's a typical conversation, if you could share? I'm just curious.
Well, I teach a graduate seminar on public opinion and political behavior and voting. So we're actually studying this stuff. The thing I've noticed in the classroom, also in talking to other student groups over the last couple of months, before the election, there was a lot of anxiousness and fear, and part of it's the politics that is opponents of students more likely to be here, at least opponents of Trump rather than supporters. On top of just the uncertainty about their future, and also uncertainty about how to basically get through the school year and get through their lives at the moment, which has been for which there's been an enormous upheaval for everyone.
Yeah. You see any sense of optimism from your students?
Well, I think since the election, there's been the climate has changed a little bit. But the other thing is the students are pretty resilient. That is to take classes online, especially these are students. These are first year. Some of these are first year or 1 year graduate students,
right,
who are doing their graduate degrees online this semester. They haven't been to campus yet, and they may not get to campus next semester. They may receive their degrees without ever arriving in New York, which is just stunning.
It is stunning. I look back on it, and back in the day when I was doing that, oftentimes I wished I could just have been outside of class instead of being there to do it. But it is done. And my son graduated from UCLA with his MBA in June. And he said, "Dad, it's so weird. I'm going to my graduation on Zoom, and I can't walk." And he had his undergraduate from UCLA as well, and then went back after a few years for his MBA, which was a big deal, as we know, and it's happening all across because you work hard for those degrees, as you well know.
Well, the only thing to be optimistic about is perhaps at some point all these students will be able to go back, come to or come back to the university for a major celebratory moment.
Well, we certainly, I'm an optimist, and I think we'll get there. Professor, you are such a pleasure. The time just flies by, and I think on the screen we got to wait for people to reach you if they want to reach out or chat with you. I love your insights. Thank you for sharing more time with us. And if we don't have it on the screen, can you share it?
Well, it's rys3@columbia.edu.
Okay, very good, sir.
I respond to all messages.
It's good. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and be safe.
You too. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Robert Shapiro. He is such an insight. The time goes so rapidly, and we're out of time. So this is Jim White saying thank you for your time, and we will see you next week. Good night.
Thank you for your participation and interest in Healing America with Dr. Jim White. To stay in touch with Jim, go to www.healingamerica with